Joining us now to discuss this is Liberal Senator Claire Chandler. Senator Chandler, thank you so much for joining us here today. Tell us about what we know about the Tavistock Clinic, its closure in the UK, and what that suggests about the state of this medical procedure and treatment course here in Australia.
Thanks very much for having me on today, everyone. The Tavistock Clinic in the UK has been under a real level of scrutiny over there for quite some time. We've seen in the last couple of years a girl called Kira Bell take the Tavistock to court to try and, or sue them, I should say, for the treatments that she received there, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, double mastectomy, all of these quite radical treatments that are being provided to children who are suffering from gender dysphoria without any real consideration of what the broader mental health ramifications might be, or what other conditions might be contributing to the way that these kids might be feeling. So the clinic has now been shut down following a very fulsome review by Dr. Hilary Cass over there to determine whether or not it was servicing children in the best way possible, and the determination was that it wasn't. And I think that this should be raising serious questions about the way that kids with gender dysphoria are being treated in Australia. We know that there was a review commissioned within the last couple of years over here that was abandoned by state government health departments. So real questions have to be answered. And I think we have an opportunity now with the Tavistock being closed in the UK because the treatments that they're providing were not fit for purpose to really start asking those questions.
Rita.
Are we on the affirmative care, as they call it, path? Is that the sort of philosophy that underpins what we do in this country when children are confused about their gender?
It's hard to say, Rita, because we don't know exactly what is going on at gender clinics in Australia. They've been very hesitant to put forward the data and put forward the information that demonstrates how many kids are being treated for gender dysphoria, what kind of treatments they're receiving and what their pathways are after receiving that treatment. But certainly there are some gender clinics in this country that are using what we call the affirmative model, which is basically taking a child that identifies as the gender in contrast to their biological sex and affirming that gender identity. And what I think these clinics need to be doing, and what I think most fair-minded Australians expect these clinics to be doing, is providing holistic mental health support to these children so that they're not rushing into treatments like puberty blockers, like cross-sex hormones, like body alteration surgery, so that they are fully supported in whatever decision that they have to make. I mean, the other question that was raised out of the Kira Bell case against the Tavistock in the UK was whether or not children are indeed able to consent to these sorts of life-altering treatments. So some real questions that need to be answered here, and I think it's up to our state health departments to start asking those questions and of the gender clinics that we have and trying to come up with a better treatment pathway.
Well, let me read you a response from one of these gender clinics here. This is the Royal Melbourne Hospital. They say, "We will continue to closely monitor how services nationally and internationally develop and evolve and welcome all actions that ensure that trans children and young people continue to receive the highest possible quality of care regardless of where they live." It's just a nothing response. What does that mean?
I was just about to say that that's all well and good that that was a response from one of the gender clinics in this country, but put forward the data, show us the treatment pathways of the kids who are being going to these clinics for assistance, and if there's nothing to hide, then put all of the information on the table so that Australians can have faith that kids with gender dysphoria are being treated appropriately.
And we do know that in Australia we've got very young children being put onto these puberty blockers, and we've had the FDA say that these puberty blockers can have devastating long-term health consequences that, again, you question whether the child can submit to that decision. And we've also had gender clinics here push to do double mastectomies on girls under 17, which hopefully they have not succeeded in doing, but it's something that they're actively pushing for, Claire.
But that's right, Rita, and I think you draw on a really important point here, and that is there has been a significant increase in the number of girls getting treatment for gender dysphoria in the last few years in Australia. There's been an increase across the board, but exponentially that increase has been in the female cohort. And I think we have to be asking ourselves very serious questions about why young Australian girls all of a sudden feel like they don't want to be a girl anymore. There are, I'm sure, many varied reasons why they might be feeling like that. Let's look at the data. Let's have a bit of transparency out of those gender clinics so that other medical professionals can start to really delve into that and understand why that is the case. And speaking of medical professionals, I think it's also relevant to note that there are many medical professionals in Australia who have been raising concerns about this sort of treatment, particularly of young girls, for a number of years. Now, I've spoken to many of them. I know that there are many more out there. We need to be listening to a diverse range of views. Sorry, getting tongue-tied on a Sunday morning, to understand what these clinics are doing, whether or not the treatments they are providing are really putting our young kids front and centre.
And yet, Senator, there's so much of a push on, despite the fact that study after study have shown that the majority of teens who experience some gender dysphoria eventually grow out of that and move on with their lives without needing that sort of very invasive treatment. Yet the orthodoxy, not just in the medical profession, but also in the schools and in much of the culture, is that as soon as you have these thoughts, then you are put on this train, and anybody who tries to say maybe you should slow down or consider something else or try this or try that is considered transphobic, is considered to be bigoted, is considered to be going against the best interest of the child. What can be done about that orthodoxy, and will cases like Tavistock and publicity around that, do you think, get at least some people to start to think twice about the orthodoxy on this?
I certainly do hope, James, that what we've seen coming out of the Tavistock does start triggering some of those conversations. One of the problems we have here in Australia, though, is that some state governments, and the Victorian state government is an excellent example of this, have put in place laws that effectively outlaw it to question any sort of treatment for young children with gender dysphoria beyond the affirmative model. So laws need to change, and culturally, of course, that change needs to occur as well. I mean, you make a good point. Some of the evidence suggests that some kids with gender dysphoria will eventually grow out of it or detransition, and that's what happened to Kira Bell in the United Kingdom. So to the gender clinics, put the information out on the public record so that we know how many of these kids are changing paths, so to speak, once they're you're sort of growing up into early or late teens and early adulthood.
But it's not a simple detransition, is it? If you've had a double mastectomy, if you've had these powerful drugs, and in Kira Bell's case, the poor girl is sterile. She can't have children. And I wonder, are we going to have class action lawsuits in this country and elsewhere where this has happened, where these people say, why did you do this to me at such a young age? Why did you put me on a path that was going to leave me sterile, was going to leave me with all sorts of lifelong health consequences?
That's right, Rita, and that goes to the consent question that we were talking about earlier. We need to be providing our kids with a fulsome model of care, a holistic model of care that looks at all of the reasons that they might be feeling out of place in their body or like that they're a gender other than their biological sex, and counselling them through those feelings rather than life-altering surgery or life-altering hormone infusions being the automatic way and the first way that we decide to treat them. Because as we've seen with Kira Bell, many of these kids grow up and regret what happened to them.
Senator, one final question for you. We had a discussion earlier, and it's been going on about the forms that parents use when they're registering the birth, and it was about a birthing parent rather than the mother. Bill Shorten said, oh, well, I ordered the change to go back to the way it was before because he said, I wanted to avoid a culture war. But why is it that every time there's some change that is made that, say, erases mothers or does any other thing, erases, whatever part of our history, the people who then say, stop, please don't do that, that doesn't make any sense. For some reason, they're the culture warriors. Can you explain that to us?
I can't really explain it to you, because I didn't quite understand that rationale from Bill Shorten. I mean, if I were him and I were making that decision to remove the term birthing parent from that Medicare form, and I applaud that decision, it was certainly the right decision. What I would be saying is that the vast majority of common sense, fair-minded Australians don't think it's appropriate or reasonable that we should be including terms like birthing parent on government forms rather than the term mother. We have seen time and time again our bureaucracy removing gendered language from government documents, and the classic example we have from the last 12 months was the COVID-19 vaccination guidance to pregnant women that was changed to reference pregnant people instead of mothers. It's happening time and time again. The vast majority of Australians don't expect that sort of garbage from our government departments, and so we are in a position where government ministers are taking a stand when it's made public. But I'm very sure that for every single instance that we have of a situation like this, like the Medicare form becoming public, a minister doing something about it, there are 10 instances that are going on within government departments unanswered.
Well, I couldn't answer that question for you.
Please, Rita.
Because when the left...
I need some help with this one.
When the left push their craziest ideology and force everyone to participate in it, that's not a culture war. But the moment anybody says, wait a second, I'm not sure that's a great idea.
That's a culture war.
That's a culture war that has to
Yep.
be called. And you know why that you can have that? Because